Hello, my name is Kira White. I'm here to present my annotated thesis presentation. I did my thesis topic on the involuntary migration of adopted infants and how that can affect their coming of age. And I speak on this topic for personal experience and just growing up and going through therapies and figuring this out and speaking with other adopted children throughout my life and how they feel about fitting in, how they feel about like when we got to like teenagers, how they feel in school, like where do they fit in, and things like that. And it was very interesting to talk to them about that. And from also my research that I did with through Eric Erickson and Beneath the Mask. And from my research, I found that it can be very difficult for adopted children to come of age. A lot of people desire, even if not adoptees, people in general, teenagers and whatnot, young adults, it's a common desire, it's very normal as well to want a family, and to have like a strong structure and sense of that. And what I've come to find is that people that weren't adopted have a stronger sense of self, and they have a better awareness of who they are due to the fact that they were raised in a biological home and family. They're constantly surrounded by those who could easily answer their questions when it came to like medical, what their heritage was, where they come from, who they look like. Like we have like these family conversations, and we are constantly talking about like, oh, like you look like so and so, your laugh is like so and so, and whatnot. That happens in biological families, and that gives them a stronger sense of self. And so when it comes to growing up, they don't have to worry about that type of anxiety, of not knowing like kind of like where they belong, because they know where they belong, they know who they are, where adoptees do not. They don't have that. They're constantly questioning themselves of like, why did this happen to me? Who do I look like? What is my medical history? And sometimes those questions, obviously when we hit like puberty and that teenage years, when those like types of questions come up, it's hard for us to find those types of answers, because we are adopted. So now we have that struggle, and on top of the fact that we're in an age group where we want to really, really fit in, and be liked by our peers and whatnot, because we know that being a teenager and going through high school can be very difficult, and that's where most of our growth mentally, physically happens, is between that ages of like 14 to 18 years old. That's the most drastic times. And so with that, the involuntary migration of infants have a very big role on later on in life psychologically affecting that. Like I mentioned before, we don't have a lot of answers because we are adopted, and sometimes those answers can be answered, but most of the time they are not, due to lack of information. And also, it was found that like in psychology that during the years of 0 to 3, those are the most vital times in development for an infant, emotionally and cognitively. And so to have like that that very intense separation for instance, like I was adopted from the Philippines, and I was brought over to Berkshire County, Massachusetts, North America. So Philippines to North America, completely different, right? Different environment, different smells, different foods, different faces, different trees. Like all these types of things are very, very different. So that's a very drastic change. And to have that happen so early on in life can really set someone back when it comes to like their development, and coming of age and whatnot. So also, these these developmental issues can lead to like behavioral issues, mental illness, which will be seen later on in life, like I mentioned, in these teenage years, when they're really trying to figure out who they are and where they came from. And these unanswered questions can really remain unanswered. Not knowing like where you come from, or like having that structure, sense of self, can really affect someone's growth in mental institution. And oh my goodness, it can just really pause them, because when they experience these things, and it can cause depression, that can lead to isolating themselves, that can make them feel left out, because when you're adolescents, you really want to fit in, and so it's hard when you don't know how to, because you don't know who you are. So when it comes to like that can very much have a major toll. So with me personally, I found myself growing up much faster at a younger age. And whatnot. I was very mature for my age at a very young age, and I just kept going with it. Where other people, with the setback, it can lead them to like want to separate from their family, because now they just feel indifferent. It can have them separate from their friends because they're finding that they're not fitting in. It could have complete opposites effects. And then because they're realizing that they don't have a lot of information about who they are, and their family, like their adopted families, can't present that to them, they're very much like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what this means for me. What's this going to do for me? And being put into an adopted home, you're raised obviously different. You're not raised in your culture, around your food, and things like that. And so you're given kind of like a masked identity. And people will take that masked identity on, which is perfectly fine. And they will rise and live that life, and then sometimes other people will want to dig into their culture and want to find out more of who they are and whatnot, which can end up having them separate from their family. And so with that, the effects of involuntary infant migration has on adopted teens is much more complex than the non-adopted teen coming of age, because of the ripple effect, because it's a ripple effect versus like a direct knowledge, if that makes sense. Because there's conscious and subconscious effects of that, and emotional traumas that they have to get over that the non-adopted teen doesn't have to face. So there's a bunch of personal I don't want to say issues, but there's a bunch of personal development that needs to happen, much more for the adopted teen than more so than versus the non-adopted teen, because there's so much of the unknown that is going on, and that can cause an identity crisis because they don't really know who they are. They don't have a sense of self. They don't have a strong identity. They have their natural identity of their nationality and race, and then they have that identity of who they are being raised as, and then when those become clashing, it becomes very confusing. It can be very scary for some adoptees. And so through treatment, and therapy, a lot of adopted teens can grow through this instead of just going through this.